It is not that surprising that there are advancements and there are updates in the Connecticut Sun-Indiana Fever game last night. So last night's game, it was all about the officiating, and I can't say that it is easy to be a referee, especially in the WNBA, or especially in the WNBA right now when it has been turned on its head last season with the induction of Caitlin Clark to the league. It has I don't even know, 10, 15 times more eyes than it used to. And believe me, the statistics all show that most of the eyes do go towards one team. So I think the officiating towards this one team definitely is going to have to be very closely monitored and made sure that it is called as fairly as possible. Because I think that last night, a lot happened. There were 6 technical fouls issued, there were 3 ejections, and there were 2 flagrant fouls. For one game, that is bananas. A lot of it is centered around the last 46 seconds where Sophie Cunningham hard fouls Jacy Sheldon. She gets ejected, Jacy gets ejected, does Lindsay? I think Lindsay gets ejected. And in watching the broadcast, even the broadcasters at the time mentioned if they would have just ejected Marina Mabrey, this probably wouldn't have happened. And the reason I'm saying this is because it sets a precedent for how physical that you can get in a game. So when Marina Mabrey was allowed to kind of cheap shot Caitlin Clark and shove her to the ground when she wasn't even looking, kind of holding her eye, that tells everyone on that court, okay, this is the level of physicality that we are allowing in the game. Now, there are camps, there are the 2 extreme camps, the people that hate the Indiana Fever and the people that love the Indiana Fever. And of course, the people that love the Indiana Fever love that Sophie Cunningham did this. They love that she took a stand. They love the message that she sent and that came along with the hard foul. And then there's the people that really do not like what the Indiana Fever have brought to the league, who are saying they do not like what Sophie Cunningham did. This should be assessed. This should be upgraded. And the league is assessing, and the league has been looking, and they have decided to upgrade Marina Mabrey's tech in the game, of which she was not kicked out, to a flagrant 2. If she would have been issued the flagrant 2 last night, she would have been ejected from the game. But not only that, they assessed an additional fine to Sophie Cunningham on her current flagrant 2, which does come with a fine, and they assessed her an additional fine for her hard foul on Jacy Sheldon and the melee that ensued afterwards. Now, people are calling for Sophie Cunningham's ejection from the league. People are commenting under Marina Mabrey stuff, and actually Marina Mabrey had a really funny response, and she said, every time they comment, I make money. There are people calling to pull the All-Star game from Indiana for player safety, but really, this really comes down to the officiating. And again, I try to put myself in the position, in hard positions, like being a referee, and gosh, I can only imagine that any referee, when they get their schedules, they know that the Indiana Fever schedules are going to be some of the most criticized and critical shifts of their season. But there just has to be a way to move through this where the officiating isn't so obviously lopsided. Officiating is not my forte, so I wouldn't exactly know how to bump that up. I would think that from what I've heard, a lot of whenever there's a really good WNBA ref, they get snatched up by the NBA. And I mean, that does kind of suck. So what are the alternatives and what are the options? And I just don't think that this is something that a lot of the league is used to, because last season, anything physical that happened to Caitlin Clark, nobody really jumped in and was like, you can't do that to my guard. You can't do that to my teammate. Where in so many of the other teams, people do jump in. People don't get in A'ja Wilson's face and get away with it. And last season, the excuse was, this is a physical league, you need to get used to it. So Caitlin Clark goes, she pumps up, the Indiana Fever put people around her, they put vets around her who know how to deal with the physicality, and that you do have to step up to somebody getting overly physical to any of your teammates. And now all of a sudden, and I hate to have these videos where I'm just kind of venting and ranting, but it is kind of, frustrating to see the hypocrisy everywhere in all the spaces when it comes to the Indiana Fever, because I'm seeing the same people saying, and the same people in the media, the same people in social media, which social media doesn't really count and it shouldn't, but these are filtering to people in the mainstream media saying it was a physical league last season, to Sophie should be ejected and her spot should be considered in the league, and calling her out on all these physical plays that were totally excusable until the Indiana Fever do them. But last year, they were not a team with an enforcer. This year, I mean, everybody knew. As soon as Sophie Cunningham got traded to the Indiana Fever, like all of a sudden, the Indiana Fever have an enforcer. Now, having good competitive fire is great, but cheap shotting, not so much. And the WNBA is in a pivotal moment right now. They have the CBA coming up, and so much of the viewership, so much of the bottom line and revenue is dependent on none other than Caitlin Clark. So you would at least want to make sure that anything that goes on around her definitely gets watched with like an extra level of safety, just an extra level of measure of care for, you know, the well-being. This doesn't mean that other players should not have that level of care and safety too, but it just so happens that the referees, they set the temperature for how the game is going to be played. Yesterday's game was like, I couldn't take my eyes off it. The physicality and the chirping, and there is an element of that does make for an interesting watch. But then when it gets to levels where Marina, Mabrey cheap shots a Caitlin Clark who had just been poked in the eye, with Caitlin Clark not even looking in her direction, people are going to get upset. And that is what made the entire game completely change. Leaving Marina Mabrey in, she was smiling about it. People were pissed. I mean, the crowd was just constantly booing her every single time she got the ball. They were booing Jacy Sheldon every single time she got the ball. And then when there's a reaction to that, like players are like, okay, you're going to let us play this physical. Sophie Cunningham, hard fouling. The entire crowd loved it. Like everybody was cheering Sophie's name right after her ejection. And right afterwards, Sophie Cunningham posted this on Instagram, basically saying, yeah, like so unserious. Coach Stephanie White, she has been calling out the officiating over in at least two post-game interviews that I know about. She was very vocal about it last night. And Caitlin Clark, sitting there right next to her, looks obviously frustrated at the whole thing too. But according to Annie Constable over at Front Office Sports, the league has told Front Office Sports at this point, neither coach has been fined for their post-game comments regarding the officiating. And I've been looking, but I cannot find the Connecticut Sun post-game interview. I did find a quote of something that he did say, and his name is Rashid Meziani. And this is what he said on the incident late in regulation, the Sophie Cunningham, Jacy Sheldon incident. I did not understand. When you're winning the game by 17 points and you're doing this, to me, stupid foul. This is just disrespectful, and I do not know how Lindsay Allen and Jacy Sheldon get ejected from the game when they did nothing. For me, it's just disrespectful to do that foul when you're winning the game by 17 points. Completely stupid. Yikes. So I feel like there's a lot brewing in the WNBA. There are some teams that do understand the spotlight, like the New York Liberty. The New York Liberty have been nothing but, chill. And there are a lot of teams that don't understand the spotlight and some coaches that don't understand the spotlight. I mean, to be honest, the league was just put under this spotlight at this level and this degree last season. But anytime you play the Fever, the intensity of every game, it goes up. Caitlin Clark is the #1 scouted player in the league, probably. I mean, Lexi Brown said that she was last season, and everybody wants to stop her. So they're going to put that extra effort in. There's going to be a lot more physical plays, and that is where the referee and officiating comes in. I honestly had no idea that when the Indiana Fever would be playing the Connecticut Sun, that such a big issue would be coming up. But I mean, I'm also not surprised because it is the Indiana Fever, and again, spotlight, eyes, everything, all eyes, Indiana Fever all the time. So they are the most scrutinized team. They are given the most attention, both bad and good. And there was a precedent set last night. Connecticut is a gritty team. They are a physical team. There was almost a brawl that ensued in the Chicago Sky game when Bria Hartley actually grabbed Angel Reese by the hair. Like she grabbed it, like closed her fist and pulled her head down. And Tina Charles went in to defend her teammate. A brawl almost ensued because Angel obviously did not like that. But I do think that the game last night was a big deal. I think the WNBA quickly reacted by upgrading the Marina Mabrey to a flagrant 2, which honestly, she should have just been ejected from the game. This is what happened last season with Kennedy Carter when her cheap shot on Caitlin wasn't addressed in the moment. I think they're trying to address that now. So the flagrant 2 has been issued. Sophie Cunningham has been issued another fine on top of her flagrant 2. But is it too little too late?